Hi everybody, Carol Garrison here with Carol's Creative Escape. It is Monday, June 6th, Monday, June 9th, which means it's time for another Make It Monday. I appreciate that you've all taken the time to join me today. I'm just double checking to make sure I'm popping up live. There we go, on my Facebook page. All right, perfect. We're where we need to be. Again, thank you all for joining me tonight. My name is Carol Garrison, and I am a card maker from White Bear Lake, Minnesota. And my goal is to simply spread joy one card at a time, typically by showing people how to make cards or encouraging you to send cards to other people, or maybe you've been lucky enough to receive a card from somebody and you know how it can really brighten your day. So really it is just one card at a time and spreading that joy. I've been making cards for over 30 years. I have been a demonstrator in the past for Stampin' Up. I am no longer with them, not because of any issues with Stampin' Up, but rather I really started looking around at my supply of stuff and realized I have a lot of things I need to use. So I've switched my focus from selling to encouraging people to use their stash. And really, with that, anything I'm showing you, you can use with current stuff that you have, you can use with old stuff. I'm really showing more techniques and fun folds and things like that. My whole goal is to help you find your creativity, use what you have on hand. If you want to buy new stuff, great, go buy new stuff. And then making sure that you share that card as well, whether it's giving it to somebody in your own home, mailing it out, or whatever. It's really just helping people gain that confidence to share your creativity and let others enjoy it as well. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope everybody had a great weekend. Our weather's been kind of strange. We've had a few days of really, really nice weather, and today, I swear to you, it is like the middle of fall. It's gray, it's cold, I shouldn't say cold, but it's in the low 60s, but it's gray. It's very windy, kind of blustery feeling. And that actually is triggering at least the paper I'm using in my card tonight, because it feels more fallish than sunshiny outside. Hope everybody had a great week and weekend. I was able to get some things done around my house. It's one of the first weekends in a few that I haven't been busy doing things with other people or for other people. And also got to spend some of that fabulous time with grandkids, which is always a great joy for me to be able to do that. So thank you again. Let me flip my camera over and we are just going to get started. Again, I apologize for any bouncing around that might occur. Well, I am doing this, and I do need to flip my camera so that you can see what I've got in front of me, or what we're going to work on. I'm going to clear off a couple things, and as seems to be my weekly challenge again, I'm hoping I can make my vision just a little bit bigger, but again, it seems to be not cooperating a whole lot here. Just a minute, let me see. I'm hoping when I get to when I figure out how I'm going to be going live in the future here, that I won't run into this problem. But I am running into it, so we are just going to work with it. I'm not going to spend time messing with it, and I will just make sure that I am holding things as close as I can. I'm going to try to get at least the image just a titch straighter on camera here, and hopefully here we'll be good to go. All right, I'm not going to fuss any further. So the card I'm making, I'm just kind of calling it a fun fold pop-out card because I don't know what else to call it. And it's just a actually diagram that I found scrolling through Pinterest. And I am going to hold up, as many of you know, I do like to make kind of templates for my cards so that I can write measurements and stuff down and I don't have to try to remember them. or anything like that. And so I have done that again. When I make these templates, oftentimes my colors and things are not going to coordinate. It's whatever scraps I happen to have handy. And the truth that can be said definitely for this card. One of the things I like about this design is it can stand up on its own. This is what it looks like kind of flattened out, so you can get an idea. It's not totally flat because I want you to be able to see some of the folds. And then the different designer series paper that I've got here. And what I like about this fold is it will fold flat and fit into a regular envelope. So that's always a win. This card, and I'm actually going to show you how to do the cutting, so don't be alarmed with that. But if you want to take a screenshot of what I've got here, I'm going to see if I can hold it up just a little bit for you maybe. If you want to take a screenshot of this, it gives you all the dimensions for designer series paper as well as the cutting. So hopefully you can see that. I'm going to hold it for probably about 5 seconds here. And feel free to take a screenshot. And I'm going to show you how to do the cutting because when I first looked at it, I was a little bit overwhelmed. So that's my template for making a card. Here is one that I did actually make. And I'm finding that sometimes my folds are working the way I expect them to, and sometimes they aren't. And I know the reason for that is that I didn't take as much time doing some of my cutting as I should have. And so I think some of my designer paper layers are just a little off, which is causing some balance here. But this is some paper and a couple stamps that I had in my stash. And I really, really like how this turned out. I think it's bright and cute and colorful. I don't know. I don't have much more to say about it. So let me show you how to go ahead and make this card. And like I said, I am going to show you how I actually did the cutting as part of my demonstration tonight. So the first thing you need is a 5.5 by 8.5 piece of cardstock. And then you need to have 2 pieces of, I had to see where I put my measurements here. 2.25 by 3 5/8 inch cardstock. That would be for these 2 panels. So you can use white, you can use a cream color off white, whatever works for you. You need 2 pieces of designer series paper that measures 1.25 by 5 3/8. Now, when I made my card, I've got just the finest of borders going around it. If you wanted to have a bigger border, you would just need to reduce all these measurements that I'm giving you by 1/8 of an inch, and that would give you the bigger border. I chose to go smaller. I've got 2 pieces of cardstock that I ran through an embossing folder just to add a little detail to it. These measure 3/8 of an inch by 3 5/8. And then I actually have 8 pieces to kind of fill in these spots of cards or designer series paper. And these each measure 3/4 by 1 3/8 of an inch. And I will caution you to make sure that you really are cutting these as those sizes. If anything, you want to go a titch smaller than that rather than a titch bigger. It'll just work better. So, quick repeat, 8 pieces that measure 3/4 by 1 3/8. 2 pieces that measure, I think I gave the wrong measurements originally. 2 pieces that measure 2 1/8 by 3 5/8. Let me just double check that measurement. You know what? Nope, I'm wrong. These measure 2 1/4 by 3 5/8. I did give it correctly. Sorry about that. These 2 pieces measure 3/8 of an inch by 3 5/8 of an inch. And these 2 pieces measure 1 1/4 by 5 3/8. So pretty easy to use, to prep for. Again, using all basically rectangle shapes. So I'm going to scrape some stuff off. And we're just going to start cutting. Now, I like to use my paper trimmer. And so maybe my camera being far away tonight is going to help with that. What you need to do is on the long side, you want to put this at your 7/8 inch mark. And make sure that you've got that lined up. And so that it's at 7/8 of an inch. And also that you have it next to the edge so that you're sure it's straight. And then I like to move my cutting blade just to the center of my paper and drop this down. One of the reasons I like to put it in the middle is I can then push it into my paper and drag it this way and that way to get to the right measurements. Whenever I'm cutting an inside cut like this, I don't like to cut right at the end. I like to start in the middle and then go back. I find I get more accurate measurements. So what you want to do is from the one end, you want to go to 1 3/8. And so I just line up the line on my cutter with 1 3/8. And then on this other end, I need to go to 7 1/8. So I'm just going to drag my cutter back. Again, look for the 7 1/8. And boom, I've got my cut where I need it. Then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So I'm setting it at 7/8. I'm going to move my cutting blade to the middle, press it down. That gets it going in my paper. And then I can move it to 1 3/8, which I just overcut this, but that's all right. We're going to make it work. So you're going to stop at 1 3/8 and you'll go up to 7 1/8. Sometimes it happens. You go over. I didn't go over that far. We'll be fine. All right. Then the next thing we're going to be doing is scoring this. And so we're going to score at 4 1/4. And I like to do this score first, primarily because it's the easiest one for me to do because it's the full length of my cardstock here. And then from this end, I want to score at 1 3/8. So on the trimmer that I actually have measurements that go to the left of that trough. And so I'm going to line it up at 1 3/8. And I'm going to run, don't do what I just did. I'm going to run, you know what? All right, that's 2 mistakes. I got to start over. Sorry about that. 1 I could cover up. 1 I don't think I can. Or 2 I don't think I can. So you'll see how to do this again. Line it up at 7/8 of an inch. Drop your cutting blade to the middle. Go to 1 3/8. And then bring it up to 7 1/8. And then we're going to flip it over. And we'll do the same thing. 7/8 of an inch. So you can kind of double check that in both spots. Bring your cutting blade to the middle, press it down. And we'll go up to 7 1/8. And then down here, we'll bring it to 1 3/8. Sometimes I will put my finger like I'm doing here next to the measurement, simply because it does force me to stop what I'm doing. All right, now we're going to go back to scoring. We're going to start at 4 1/4. And again, on this one, you will be using your scoring blade the full width of the card. And then the next score line that we're going to be adding is going to be this one right here. So we'll go and we'll start at 1 3/8. But what you want to make sure when you're doing this particular scoring is that you only score between the cut lines and not the entire width of the card like I did the first time. So we just want to score from here to here. Okay? So I'm going to just get my cutting or my scoring blade lined up with my cut line, and I'm setting it up. And then I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to do 1 3/8 again. And again, I'm going to start at my cut line and just go up to the cut line. So we're going to leave it like that. Now, the next score that we need to make is right here. And that's going to be a 1/2 inch in. So here we are at 1 3/8. We're going to add a 1/2 inch, which means we'll be at 1 7/8. Now my cutting thing or my guide on this side only goes to 1 1/2 inches. So I need to bring this in, and I'm going to set it up at 1 7/8, and that will give me my 1/2 inch from my first score line. Again, I'm going to put my scoring blade in here, drag it down to the first cut line, and then I'm going to drag it up to the second cut line. But I don't want to go past the cut line. Flip it over. We'll do the same thing. Line it up at 1 7/8 of an inch. Put your scoring blade kind of in the middle. Drag it down to the cut line. Drag it back up to the other cut line. And then finally, we need to make our 1 1/2 inch score lines here, which will allow for this fold to occur. So to do this, I just line up my 4 1/4. In this case, it's 1 1/2 inches out, so I'm lining it up to the edge of my cutting guide because I know that that is 1 1/2 inches. And on this scoring, I am just doing the upper part down to the cutting line, just like that. So that little bit of area. I am going to also do, so I said it was what, completely lost track of what I was doing. Yes. I've got this here. I'm going to bring this over to here. And so I know I'm scoring at 1 1/2 inches. But again, I only want to do the bottom part. So I'll score it up to the cut line. Hopefully that makes sense. And then we are going to flip it over and pretty much do the same thing, but on the other side. So we'll get that lined up at 1 1/2 inches. And I will score it here. And then bring my scoring blade up without scoring. And I'm going to get the top part as well. That is all we need to do to set this piece up. I know it sounds like a lot, but honestly, when you do it, it really is not that hard. The next thing I like to do is just get my bone folder and do all of the embossing or folding along the score lines. So I am going to start in the middle just because I find that easier. This one you're going to do mountain fold, but these two pieces will be a valley fold. And then these next score lines will be mountain and mountain. So these pieces, mountain, valley, mountain. This is going to start with the mountain, go valley, and then mountain for this little piece. Try not to fold too much on this part. Hey Knox, do you think you can maybe get down? We'll fold that over as valley, and this will be mountain. Again, being very careful not to, you know what, Knox? I know, we're gonna just get you down here because you're kind of in the way. All right. Again, just be careful not to fold right here and right here as you're doing this. And then what I find works best for me, and you can do whatever works best for you as well, is I will come back and fold this over in a manner that allows me to fold the card in half. And I can then score or burnish with my bone folder here and on this piece. Okay, I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to burnish here and over here again. And that's just because on these flaps I'm actually going through 2 layers. Once I have that done, I can come in here and I've got that valley fold there, so I'm just gonna burnish it here and then come in and burnish right here. And then I will repeat that right here and right here. And that gives me a pretty solid fold. And then what I like to do is fold it like when I'm going to mail it. And just one more time go over these folds so that I get it pretty crisp. And that is the gist of, it goes this way, of this card. Now I have to play with it a couple times in order to get it to work. It's going to go this way. So this piece will, you know what, I folded these the wrong way. Not a big deal. We're just going to come back through and fold it like this and burnish it. We'll make it nice and strong. And then I want to do this and this. I didn't think I had it right originally. So we'll go like this and like that. There we go. Now we've got it. And so by folding it like this, the top and the bottom stick out and it kind of helps this card stand up all on its own once you have it all fully decorated. All right. So again, oh, I got clumps of cat hair. I'm grabbing that cat. On these pieces, it's going to be Valley, Mountain, Valley, Valley, Mountain, Valley. On this piece, you're going to have Valley, Mountain, Valley, Mountain, Valley. If that helps you remember how things go. The next thing that I'm going to do is start to assemble my card. Now, I am going to stamp a sentiment on one side, and I'm going to have my decoration on the other side. And I am using, it's a stamp set called Gently Falling. This is an older Stampin' Up set, and it does, it has retired. In fact, it's so old that it has those clear things that we used to have to tape in order to get them to stick to our blocks better. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab my notepad because I am going to be stamping off, and I just want to make sure that I'm not getting any ink on my work surface. I am also going to be totally forgot what I was going to say, so we're not going to worry about it. I am going to just kind of lay a pattern on here of leaves. It may or may not make sense, but I want to have just kind of an all-over design. And so I'm going to choose to do these 3 leaves. Because this is older school stamping, I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive to the back of my stamps because I want to make sure that they stick to my block. And right now I know they won't as they are set up. So that's just a little trick for getting some of those smoother stamps to stick to your block. I have got a couple different colors that will coordinate with my paper. So I'm starting with Cajun Craze. And we're going to do a lovely oak leaf. I told you, I feel like I'm doing more fall than summer here with this card. And I'm just going to stamp it on like that. I have my cleaning cloth somewhere. There we go. We'll clean this off. Throw that in there. I will grab my big maple leaf, and this one I think I will do in an old olive color. This is one of my favorite sets of leaf stamps. I absolutely love it. We'll put it right there. And again, all I'm trying to do is just sort of establish a little bit of an all over pattern to use as my focal point. And last but not least, I've got this little leaf, and I am going to do that one in a gold yellow color. And we'll put that one right there. And then I do want to add just a little bit more detail. I didn't think I was going to at first, but let me find... So I've got a stamp that's just kind of an all over dot, random dot pattern that I'm going to use, and I'm going to do this as kind of second or third generation. I'm going to stamp and see what it looks like. And it's amazing how just a splatter pattern like this can add some detail to your card. I'm actually going to use third generation stamping, which means I'm going to get a lighter image, and I'm just going to sort of put it on there. I don't care if it gets onto my leaves. In fact, I kind of want that to happen because I'm just trying to add a little bit more fill to this card. There we go. And I may just come back with the ink that I have left and do that. And so now I've got just a slight spatter pattern onto this. It adds a little bit more detail, but does not distract from the stamping that I've already done. All right, so that takes care of the focal point of my card. And now I want to put a sentiment on here. I was thinking more in terms of this being kind of a masculine or a fall birthday card. It can go either way. So I am using the Happy Birthday to You. This stamp is a photopolymer stamp, and it happens to be a Waffle Flowers collection. Just letting you know in case you're interested in looking it up and trying to get one for yourself. So I'm going to put this on my block, and I'm going to get out my Early Espresso ink, which happens to be the color of the paper that I'm using. And that's how I'm going to stamp my sentiment. But I want to go back and create some pattern to what I'm doing here. And so I'm going to once again open up my orange ink and grab this stamp and do just all over, randomly hit and fill up this cardstock, making sure that, again, it will be light and not take over, but add some color or texture to the card. And then I'm very, very lightly going to repeat the pattern that I created here. That will be third, if not lighter, generation stamping, because I really want to keep it as just a background design and not as the full image of the stamp. So I will wipe this one off. With this one, I did it in the darker gold color here, so I'm going to come back in. One. Yeah, I think I'm going to do it as a 3. 1, 2, 3. And again, the intent is to just have it barely show up. The next leaf I'm going to do, let me wipe it off here. One of the things I like about this focus that I'm putting on using my stash is a lot of times when you sell stuff, it doesn't matter if it's stamping supplies or something else, you tend to either hang on to a lot or you get rid of things as product lines expire, retire, that sort of thing. And I kind of did a combination of both, but if I had a set I really liked, I kept it on my shelf. But what I found is that, of course, I was always going to the newest and most beautiful stamp sets that I just purchased. And a lot of my older stamp sets like this just sort of got pushed to the wayside. And as I've been going back and trying to use up my stash, I have discovered some of these old favorites again. And it's actually been kind of fun to go back and find these stamps. It's sort of like having them all be brand new again. All right, so again there, I've just got a little bit of outline to offset my sentiment. And I'm now going to come in with this stamp and put that birthday greetings to you. I did something to my hand, and my strength right now is not real strong in this hand with my thumb pushing down, but we will get there. It's just tonight it's causing me some fits. One of the things I do like to do when I'm doing a darker colored ink on these photopolymer stamps is I will first stamp it in the Versamark, which just kind of gives that clear coating. I have no problems at all if my stamps get stained, but I find that sometimes the darker colors stain them in a way I don't want them to be stained. And so by putting that Versamark on, it allows me to get the dark ink that I want to put on here, but it doesn't stain my stamp. Set that one aside for a few minutes. And then the next piece to keep that staining from occurring too is to get it wiped off right away. Like I said, I don't have a problem with a little staining. The reds, of course, are going to leave a pink tinge to those stamps. But I have found that in some ways that helps me stamp better because I can actually see my image. So there are the two stamp pieces for the inside of our card. And you can sort of see I matched the pattern, but again was able to lighten this side up so that the focus would then be on the sentiment instead of on the stamped image. The rest of this card, easy peasy, because we're just putting on our designer paper. And somewhere I had sitting out when I started a silicone mat. I like to use this when I'm putting tape on very small or narrow strips, and this one fits the bill for that. And so I'm just taking my tape runner and I'm going to run it down the length of this strip. Even though it's skinny, I want to make sure I've got enough adhesive on it. Anything oh, excuse me, anything that sticks over, I'm just going to take my fingers and fold back to the back side of the paper. The tape runner I'm using just happens to be one that is a little bit thicker than my paper, but not a big deal. I can just fold it over and everything's going to hold that much and not more, and it's not going to show. So these little strips are going to go right into that narrow space. And again, when I'm adhering things, I like to look at my opposite corners and make sure they're even. Once I've confirmed that, I will get one little piece that's sticking out right here. And we'll come back and get that. All right, I'm going to repeat that process with that next little strip. And I'm more concerned that I get the ends covered and most of the way of my strip. I don't care if I've got a little gap, as long as I know my ends are going to be adhered well. We're going to put this piece right here. And again, before I press it down, I'm just going to look at opposite corners and we'll get it in there correctly. I managed to miss one little piece. I'll go back and clean it when the video's done. Then we are going to take this piece, and again, I make sure my corners are adhered and I've got a piece in the center, but I don't worry too much more on that. If you've got good adhesive, you shouldn't have to use a lot. And then I'm just looking at my opposite corners to make sure I've got stuff lined up pretty evenly. And if these two corners are lined up, these two should be lined up. And I do, it's a little close to my score line. I think I'm going to try and lift it up, and let me get that out of the way so you can see. I'm going to focus on getting it pretty close to where I want it on this side, and then I'll go back to opposite corners, and that's going to give me a little bit more space. All right. We'll repeat that process again. I like to make sure my corners are covered, a little strip in the middle, and then corner to corner on the bottoms, just because if it's going to lift up, it'll be at one of the corners. All right, and then again, we're going to go opposite corner to opposite corner, make sure it's lined up, and now we have our inside pieces done. The next step is to add these little pieces of paper. Now, I would encourage you to cut these a teeny bit smaller if you don't always measure accurately, which is one of my problems. And I can tell already that some of these pieces aren't going to fit as well as I want them to. And so I am going to just get my paper snips. Normally I'm a die-hard cutter, but I am just grabbing my paper snips, and I'm just going to take a teeny bit. It's going to be so small, it's one of those that rolls when you cut it. That's how little I'm taking off. I don't know if you can see how tiny those pieces are. Let me hold them up. It's going to be just enough that they're going to fit into those little spaces better by taking off just that little teeny bit. So I'm going to repeat that on all 8 of these pieces because again, I'd rather that they're a little bit smaller than not. And this is one of those things that you're never quite sure what you're going to have to do until you've got your card laid out and score lines and everything done. You know, you're still human, and so things aren't going to be measured absolutely perfect. And this is how we can easily correct and adjust for that. Sometimes the smaller the paper, the harder it is to get the cut as perfect as you would like it. Anybody else have that issue? And then this is our last piece. And again, I'm going to just trim off enough to create a curl. Now we'll get rid of that. And then what I'm going to do is bring back my little mat here, and 4 of these will be on the leaf side and 4 will be on the green side. I'm kind of looking for colors here that I want to have show. And I think that's the way we're going to go. So I actually am going to flip these all over to the opposite sides, because this of course is where I want my tape to go, now that I have them laid out as I want. And for these, I was literally just going end to end. They're not really big enough for 2 strips. So by doing end to end, I'm getting it covered in a manner that will be sufficient for this card. And I'm going to go ahead and tape all of these up at one time. And again, if you go over a little bit, just tuck that over. I think I did a little bit on that one too, and that just gets it out of the way. So we'll slide those up there, and what I'm going to do is start with an inside piece. So it'll go here, and I'm just alternating these, so every other one is going to be green and leaves, and then green, and then leaves. And we're just putting these in the center area. Let's see, I need a leaf. So we'll go like that. And then we're going to start kind of the opposite pattern down here. So we'll start with green, go to leaves, green, and go to leaves. All right, last but not least, we're going to add this piece of designer series paper on here. And I am going to tape the ends. I'm going to run a strip down the middle, both directions. And that gives me enough to adhere. Make sure that you've got the tree standing the right direction. And we'll just add this, going corner to corner. And we're going to repeat that with this piece. And that is the correct direction here. And we'll go corner to corner. Drop it down. And there we go. Pretty cool, fancy card that'll stand up for people to be able to display it. And not that hard to make. The cutting is probably the trickiest part. And again, because I've given you the starting and the ending measurement, and you know how far up from either side, even that isn't that hard. So we've got this gorgeous card. You can see how it stands. This is what it's going to look like from the front. Happy birthday to you. Like I said, kind of masculine toned. Also a great fall birthday. Doesn't matter really, male or female. I will hold this up closer so that you can see some of the stamping that I did here. Maybe in more detail, and especially just how much that little speckle can add to the background. If you wanted to add some bling on here, you could. And then when you go to mail it, it's just going to fold up super easy and be flat. Obviously, this isn't going to work. It's going to be too wide. And so you may have to play just a little bit to get it going in the right direction. But ultimately, this is how it's going to look when it's folded flat. Same on either side. And it will fit into a regular envelope. When the recipient gets it, it should pop open so that they can ooh and ah. And then the card will stay standing up on its own. It might take just a little bit of kind of tweaking it a little bit. But there you go. So a great fall kind of birthday card, even though it's really early for that. Here's a much brighter spring tone card. Same fold. Same fun to put together. And I will repeat all of the measurements one more time just so that you get them. The card base itself is 5.5 by 8.5. You will score it at 4 1/4, and then you will score it again at 1 3/8. Actually, the first thing you want to do is your cut line, and that is 7/8 of an inch in from the edges, and you will cut from 1 3/8 to 7 1/8, and that's that distance in here. The next thing you'll do is score at 4 1/4, the whole width of the card, and then, or length of the card, and then you will also score at 1 3/8 inch and at 1 7/8 inch, just a 1/2 inch in from there. And then on this side, you'll do the same thing. Score it at 1 7/8 inch in from this edge. And then again at, 1 3/8 inch. And then again at 1 3/8 inch for this score line, 1 7/8 inch for that. Making sure that you're only scoring this part of the card and not all the way up and down. This is then scored at 1 1/2 inches to either side of that center score line. This piece of paper here measures 1 1/4 by 5 3/8. These two pieces measure 3/8 by 3 5/8. These two pieces measure 2 1/4 by 3 5/8. And these 8 pieces measure 3/4 by 1 3/8 inch, but you might have to trim just a skosh off depending on where your final score lines pop up. Super easy card. Would love to see what combinations you guys put together using your stash, so do feel free to post that in the comments. And I do hope you give this a try, and we'll see everybody again next week. Have a great one. Bye-bye.